All right. So good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Secura and Alicia for giving me the opportunity to share this presentation with you today. It really is a case study which involves our experiences over the last 3 years, and I'm going to be very transparent with you during the next 45 minutes because it started off as a project with some very powerful and positive outcomes, and as is traditional with projects such as this, we now have a new status quo, and I'm going to share some of those results with you. And basically, we need to get back on track, and that's what most of this is going to be about today. So I'm just getting familiar with the technology. So, all right. So the agenda today is basically, I'm going to talk a little bit about change that's occurring in just about every country in this world. And I'm presuming that most of the people that are registered for this webinar today are from the USA or Canada. And I'm going to just talk about some of those realities as well. I'll talk a little bit about the leadership that's required to deal with change. I'll tell you about lean and stretch goals, a little bit about that, some of our experiences with our experiment and our challenges. And then I want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the applications of business intelligence that allows us to manage this whole situation. And then I will finish off with some outcomes, some of the lessons we've learned, and then I'll open it up for Q&A. So, right. So just a little bit about Grand River and St. Mary's, which is situated in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. So just to give you a profile, the hospitals are Grand River and St. Mary's. We're about 3 miles apart. They're substantially large hospitals in terms of bed size when you combine it. And since this particular topic is primarily about pathology and cytology, just to give you an indication that we handle about 28,000 pathology cases on an annual basis, much smaller volume for cytology, but we are a cancer center at Grand River. St. Mary's is primarily a cardiac center, and so the scope of services are slightly different, but the pathology services are integrated and provided at Grand River Hospital. So let's talk a little bit about today's reality, and it doesn't really matter. Is that I think, especially those of us who are in North America, we're certainly being asked to do a lot more services with reduced resources. We are seeing a lot of changes in clinical demand, a lot of change in case complexity and acuity. And basically, the biggest pressure is to reduce cost, and I'm living that as I speak to you today. And, you know, I can speak to the United States as well, where you have what's called the Protecting Access to Medicare Act, the PAMA Act. And just recently, it's been made known to all of us that United States laboratories can expect to have their reimbursement reduced over the next 5 years by as much as 75%. That is substantial, and in any 1 year, a single test's reimbursement could reduce by 10 to 15%. So in the grand scheme of things, this has been our reality as part of a socialized public system in Canada for many, many years. And so welcome to our world, but basically the issue of pressure to reduce budgets and costs is prevalent everywhere in the global world today. So as you can imagine, we're all going to have to accept change is necessary and inevitable in the years to come. And part of the reason for this slide is to just give you an understanding that in order to be successful with managing the next steps, you're going to have some very strong leadership, both situational and formal. You need good stewardship, which clearly understand the values and the benefits of your own operation in terms of a SWOT analysis, which is basically what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are the opportunities out there, what are the threats out there. We all know that the declining reimbursement is a threat, but we got to get above that, because I think what's inevitable is it's not going to be a situation where we're going to get enough money in our budgets to provide the demand and the service that's required as we go forward. And then, of course, as part of this change, there's definitely a growing understanding and realization that the new processes have got to be patient-centered as opposed to clinical or physician-based practices, and which negatively impact patient care. So we are certainly in Canada seeing a growing realization from the physicians, clinicians, that processes need to take into consideration the true needs and the benefits to patient care as opposed to their personal preferences. And we're working through that. And maybe through the course of my presentation today, you will get a sense of what patient-centric means and how we adopted that philosophy as well. And then last but not least, with any change, you can expect that staff are going to be fearful, there's going to be resistance, there's going to be skeptics, and part of a good change leader is to be able to manage that in a systematic way. So as part of the leadership, some of the elements that are necessary to drive the change, manage the new paradigm, is basically you need an engaging and inspirational vision. And that helps to motivate the team, your staff, to implement whatever project solutions that you have in mind. And of course, one of your major roles as a leader is to remove the obstacles and serve as a change champion so that the opportunities to learn and improve and get better are prevalent as part of the operation. So the next few slides is just a little bit about Lean. And we at Grand River and St. Mary's have adopted Lean a few years ago to help us manage all of these new expectations, these new changes. And the rest of the presentation is basically going to be our experiences going down that path. So Lean basically, if you wish to define it, is a strategy to eliminate waste and non-value added activities to meet the client or the patient's demands. And basically, at the end of the day, you do that right, it's going to be an opportunity to improve operational efficiencies and processing capacity. And the whole purpose of going down the road of Lean is basically to optimize various factors. Certainly, it leads to increased client and patient satisfaction. I'll show you some evidence about that. It helps you to better utilize your resources, your space. It helps with staff productivity. And above all, it helps to deal with patient and client needs. So when we started this journey about 3 years ago, we had some significant operational issues that needed to be addressed. And at that time, we accepted that Lean was the best option for us to deal with all of these issues. So basically, we had a lot of batching going on. The sizes were uncontrolled. We had no integration between the pre-analytical, analytical, and post-analytical processes. And as a result of that, we were not meeting the client's needs or the patient's needs in a consistent manner. We had pre-assignment of cases to pathologists, which was done at the pre-analytical stage. And the reason for that is in Canada, certainly at our two hospitals, pathologists are salaried employees. And as such, they wanted the workload to be equally distributed over a week, over a month, over a year. And we needed to have mechanisms to ensure and to demonstrate that the work was being distributed equally amongst the 11 or 12 pathologists that we have on a regular basis. And of course, as a result of this, we had a significant number of backlogs. Cases were being constantly prioritized and reprioritized. And at the end of the day, we had a lot of unhappy clients and patients because the turnaround times were not being met. So just to give you an idea, 3 years ago, we were using this particular source for turnaround times. It's an American-based system. But basically, you'll see from this slide that we had different types of targets for biopsies, for gynae, for large cases. But the bottom line is, whichever way you look at it, we were not meeting the turnaround time target that we had set for ourselves. So change had to happen. So as part of our journey into Lean, and Kaizens is just another way of saying that there's an opportunity for improvement. This is just a snapshot on one slide of the study that we undertook And these were all of the opportunities that the staff identified as needed in order to improve our operations and meet our turnaround times and improve customer satisfaction. So, for example, the pathologists needed to set criteria to send reports for quality reviews. They needed to set the pace for daily demand. Then we had decided that the supermarket, the size must be limited to have a backlog of no more than 2 days. So basically, we had different opportunities at the pre-analytical, analytical, and post-analytical phases, which enabled us to undertake our. So this slide then summarizes what exactly the changes were. So we were in the pre-lean mode in 2011. I'm showing you 2 fiscal years of differences and statistics, but basically one of our goals was to reduce backlogs, and you'll see from an accessioning standpoint, for the past year or 2, we've done reasonably well. Every now and again, we do have a number of cases that are left over, but they're few and far between. Grossing has got better, but we've had some difficulties. I'm going to share that with you shortly. But the slippage has happened with the sign-outs, and I can tell you in the fiscal year 11-12, which was our first year, at the 7-day mark, we were closer to 90% or better, and then last year we got to 78, and this year we're going in the wrong direction. It's at 67%, and that is part of our challenge and part of the problem, which I'm going to tell you about. So when we go back to the origins of our study, we had to create a new vision. And these are just the elements of our vision, but the key message here is that we were going to be working on a system where the client pulls the service. And what that means is the client pulls the pathologist pulls the technical component pulls from the grossing component, which pulls from the accessioning, which pulls from the specimen collection. And that's the flow that would decide that the pathologist set the workflow pace for the day, for the week, and for the month. And at the end of the day, we then had to change our work schedules and our staffing schedules so that we would have continuous flow. And the vision was that if we could handle on a daily basis what comes in or on a weekly basis, so let's say 100 cases come in, 100 cases get signed out, we would always be in a steady state. Well, we did achieve that in the first year, but ever since year 2 and year 3, it's been a much bigger challenge, and I'll go into that in a subsequent slide as well. Also, as part of the vision, we had to create new workflow models. The first one was that we were going to start working in FIFO, meaning first in, first out. It didn't really matter whether it was a large specimen, a biopsy, a cytology specimen. That's the way we were going to work through, and that would enable us to have the minimal amount of batching, which when you adopt a lean model, batching is not a good thing. It needs to be going into a continuous flow. And then we also needed to have, as part of the vision, that we were going to have controls and we were going to be proactive in order to manage the workflow so that we would not have backlogs or excessive inventory on a daily basis, which at the end of the day was one of the reasons why our clients were having difficulties and being dissatisfied with the service they were receiving pre-lean. So, just from what I've shared with you so far in the last 10 minutes, you are probably getting a sense there was a lot of change, very comprehensive, very profound, that needed to happen in our department to switch from where we were pre-lean to where our vision wanted to take us. So we created some very clear principles that we were going to adopt as a team, as a department, in order to make the change management successful. So here's some of those things that we subscribe to. It's all about learning, improving, and moving forward. And we certainly adopted a mindset that we would have a zero tolerance for blame and shame tactics, either between the team, between our clients, between our stakeholders. That was not necessary because it doesn't help with learning and moving forward. And that has helped us. We also wanted to accept upfront that whatever changes we were going to make would need to be evidence-based. And that is something that I can say has stood the test of time. And 3 years later, we still adopt that mindset, and it's been very helpful to us. And just to avoid perfection, not that the processes were going to be completely accurate or completely doable at the get-go, we adopted a mindset that chasing the perfect solution was not helpful. We would rather try, experiment, measure, and then come back to seeing whether that works or not. And that was part of our change principles as well. So, in summary, we put our staff and our department through a lot of changes. So here's just a highlight of some of the changes. I'll just deal with the most significant one. We eliminated pre-assignment of cases to pathologists. That was considered a non-value-added process, was extremely time-consuming, and provided no benefit to either our clients or our patients. We adopted the workflow model of first in, first out, and we also adopted the supermarket where instead of the slides being given to a pathologist in their offices, they had to go to a central space and pick out the cases that they were going to work on for that day or for that particular circumstance. And essentially, we were now into lean, where we were pulling as opposed to pushing workflow to either the technologist or to the pathologist. Now, in order for us to have our vision realized, we had to set ourselves some very stringent and ambitious goals. And here's an example of the goals we set at the get-go. We accepted from a proof of concept of our project that it was feasible and practical to have a turnaround time of 90% of any case type in our laboratory reported in 5 days. How that came about was we had evidence that accessioning was a day, technical processing was a day, maybe 2. So if all the system was working effectively and we had good flow, the slides would be available to a pathologist on day 3 at the earliest, and they had essentially 2 days to sign that report out. So as a team, we accepted that as a challenge and went forward with it. We also accepted that we were in a position, if we had steady flow and FIFO, we could eliminate backlogs and get rid of some of the non-value-added processes. So we accepted that as a goal. And also, because this was a big cultural change in our department, we needed to educate staff about the concepts and the culture of lean, and then have the ability to transfer this knowledge and skills on an ongoing basis. So the next few slides are basically about our experiences, our story, our results, and it's a mixed bag of the good, the not so good, and where we have an opportunity to go and get back on track. So the first slide I want to share with you is our current performance. The first slide, which if you can see, is our pre-lean days, and the next 4 quarters is what's happened in the last fiscal year from April 2013 till March of 2014. So you will see we break down our data in segments of 3, 4, 5, 7, and 10 days. And the main thing is that we want at 5 days to be at 90%. So you can clearly see we have dropped off in the last year and have not been meeting that target. We're somewhat doing better at the 7 days, but again, you'll see a decline, and by 10 days, we're getting things out. But that was not the stretch goal. So that is what is our experiences and our data for the last fiscal. Now, with biopsies, our stretch goal is in 4 working days for obvious reasons. We are a cancer center at Grand River Hospital, and we get a lot of breast biopsies. So thankfully, the good news here is that from a breast biopsy turnaround time metric, we are doing very well, and that has stood the test of time from pre-lean right through to the last quarter, we're pretty close to 90% in 4 working days, and that is something that is a positive. Now, our main stretch goal was 90% of all types of cases, biopsies, small, large, routines, gynae, non-gynae, and you'll see here that we have 5 working days, 7 working days, and the target is 90. So quite clearly you will see that we've had some slippage with the 5 days, and if you go since July of last year, we have been going downhill, and including in December, which has got fewer working days, our turnaround time is defined in working days, we did have even more problems, which necessitated us to get back to the drawing board, and I'm going to tell you about that soon. So I just put this slide up to remind everyone that with lean, and if you look in the literature, you will find that the biggest challenges with lean projects start to unfold in years 2 and 3, because people start reverting back to the status quo, or there's a new status quo, and that's exactly what happened to us. So we accepted that as a challenge, and there we go.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Alicia. I put this slide up because this was an experiment. This was a pilot study in the hospital, and the lab was required to justify the expenses associated with this particular project. So we did that, and this slide tells you that we had a payback of less than 4.59 months, and actually we had a return of investment of 261%, which was very remarkable, and considering that we improved service, this is something that was used by the hospital as a demonstration model for other projects as well. This slide will show you the evidence that we gathered from our staff. The survey was done in October 2011, which is about 5 months after we went live with the new lean model of workflow. And you will see from this slide that we got very positive comments from our staff about the overall service delivery improving as a result of adopting lean. There was a high level of job satisfaction with the new model, and what was really refreshing is that people thought that there was clearly an impact on improving turnaround times, which is why we got into it, because we had a high level of client dissatisfaction prior to going into the lean model. So what are some of the reasons and the factors that are contributing to our issues where we are not meeting our stretch goal of 90% in 5 days? So in the past year, basically, we have evidence that we have deviated from some of our standard operating procedures. We are not following the FIFO rule consistently. We are not meeting our targets on a day or weekly basis on a consistent basis. And the primary reason behind all of that is that we've had some very significant staffing shortages and issues for the past year, in fact, a little bit longer. And let me just give you an example. It's not meant as an excuse, but just part of our reality. So, for example, with pathology assistants, we schedule 4 pathology assistants each day. And if we have 1 short, that's a quarter of our workforce not available. We have 1 short, plus you get a sick call, we have 50% of our workforce not available to process our daily workload. Now, the reality is, because of the financial constraints of the hospital, the budget pressures, we don't have dollars in our budget for capacity, backup capacity, for sick time, and for unforeseen circumstances where we are short of staff. So the reality is the 2 people available or the 3 people available are expected to carry the workload of the person that's not available. And when this extends from weeks to months, sometimes longer when there's long-term illnesses, it's had an impact on our turnaround time. And that is the absolute reality of what's happened in our department. So, accepting that as a fact, we had to then decide on some new measures as to how we were going to get back on track. So we did some education. We re-emphasized with all of the staff about our goals, about our realities. We color-coded the supermarket. This was an idea from the staff. All of these are ideas from the staff, which enabled us to very quickly pinpoint how many days we might be behind with a particular case. And we have productivity targets and measures that we are able to communicate on a daily basis. And basically, we did have the Vuix business intelligence tool, which I'm going to talk about, which enabled us to actually manage the workflow in a more systematic manner. Just in April of this year, and I hope those of you that are on the webinar can read this in more detail on your laptops or on your screen. But basically, we've done a root cause analysis because we are determined to get back on track. The best we ever did with our goal was get to 88% in a quarter, and we were that close to doing it consistently, and then things went wrong. But basically, here's the many factors. We did a fishbone analysis, and if you just look at the key ingredients of the fishbone analysis, we've got staffing issues, we have some equipment issues, we've got some people issues in terms of workflow, we have process issues, there are some minimal IT issues, and then workload is always a problem because I don't know about your particular department, but our workload typically grows anywhere from between 1% and 5% a year, and we don't get any allowances in the budget to compensate for that. So the root cause analysis is what we're working through as I speak to you today to help us get back on track. Now, the next few slides are about the business application that we've utilized, and I'm happy to say we've had very positive experience with the Vuix application. And our mantra since we got into Lean is, we trust in God, but everyone else needs to bring data. And remember that this is important for us because one of our principles is evidence-based decision-making. So what is Vuix and the business intelligence tool all about? So this is trend-setting cloud technology. It's basically a very powerful way to be proactive versus reactive, and it provides you with displays data in almost real time or whatever you want to set it. In our particular department, we have set the clock at every 24 hours to refresh. So if we wanted to do it by the hour, we could, but it's just too much work for us, and 24 hours meets our need. So just a little bit about Vuix and the application. It is a health-based product which is designed with the user in mind. So we were the first install in Canada, and we were very happy to pilot test this particular application. So we had a lot of customization done for us, which enabled us to basically manage the tool so that our needs and our criteria were available to us. But basically, it is a best-of-breed technology based on cloud architecture. And if I have one positive thing to say, which you need to hear about, is you do have the ability to customize it to your operational needs. And the analytics are all built in, which allows you to really get the data you want at the time you want. The types of tools available within the application are basically structured around operational requirements, physician, clinician, client types of metrics, and then financial. We at Grand River and St. Mary's have only used it for the operational because ours was a pilot test. We just used it for workload, turnaround times, and productivity, and it has really helped us to manage this project in a very systematic way. This slide is to describe what our IT department had to say about the product, because I don't know how your particular organizations work, but I can tell you the laboratory department at Grand River and St. Mary's is highly dependent on the IT department for numerous projects, for numerous applications. And so anytime we can remove some of the burden from the IT department, it's a good thing. So we asked them to evaluate after we went live with the Vuix what their impressions were with this particular application. and business intelligence tool, and this is what they had to say. It was easy to maintain, it was a low-touch application, and what was really very surprising to us, all the Vuex did tell us that was the case. We went from start to finish and live in less than 3 months with very little hands-on requirements from the IT department. Our own lab staff took the initiative with the training and with the application. So our needs from Vuex were simply to get these types of reports. We needed turnaround times, we needed productivity, we needed to know about the overdue, and we needed utilization reports, which we have not got into any depth, but we also, because we are a regional cancer center, have to do mandatory reporting to the government on certain types of tests. And to contrast that with having to do it manually, I can tell you that the time saved but having it through Vuex is significant. And the difference is that we used to get our reports quarterly and it was retrospective. That doesn't cut it anymore with respect to clinical demand and to being proactive. And in fact, it actually makes you more complacent, because if you're analyzing things retrospectively, it doesn't give you the momentum to be more assertive and aggressive with trying to get back on track. So that's one of the benefits of Vuex as well. And that's just a slide of my pathology manager, with how before our lean applications were put into place, every Sunday she needed to make all of these reports on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and it was just too much. Now, the next few slides are basically about how we use Vuex, and I'm going to show you some very specific examples of the data that's available. Again, I will underscore the fact that's how we use it. Should you use a business intelligence application, you have the ability to customize it whichever way you want. But I do have to say, from our experiences, we have found it to be extremely user flexible, and we set the parameters that best meet our operational needs. So here's an example in cytology. Very quickly, when we see a report like this on a daily basis, we can tell how many were accessioned, how many were reviewed by the technologist, how many were actually received, and how many cases are outstanding at the end of the day. All of this is available for us on a 24/7 basis. Here's an example of the histology dashboard. On this slide, we get to see how many cases actually came in and were accessioned. On this slide, how many cases were actually growth that particular day compared to what was accessioned. And at the bottom here, as I said to you, when we're scheduled and we have everyone on board, we have 4 pathology assistants. And here, we actually get to monitor how many cases each pathology assistant accessioned on any particular day. And that gives us a sense of our productivity from a pathologist assistant standpoint. As I said to you, one of our goals was to have a clear understanding of how many cases are outstanding each day or backlogged. And on this particular report, we can see how many cases came in and how many are left over each day. And that tells us how we can manage the next day to get back on track. Here's one that always generates interest. And whenever I do this talk at various seminars, people are always very impressed that we have the ability to monitor pathologist, MD, productivity on a daily basis. So on this particular slide, so here we have about 11 pathologists. Each one is anonymized, but we can tell on a daily basis how many cases were signed out and how many by pathologist and how many slides were involved with the number of cases they signed out. And over here, we can get a mix of surgical cases versus bone marrow. It's all color-coded. So up front, every pathologist who sees this knows that in a transparent way, how they are contributing to our turnaround time goal, because in order for us to be in steady state, if we receive 150 cases a day, we process 150 cases a day, and the pathologists sign out 150 cases a day as a team, we are in steady flow. So the benefits of using Vuex in our in our department, which is adopted Lean, is that we have these reports, and we have created all of these thanks to my manager, Shelley Owen, and many pathologists who contributed to the look of these screens and the indicators. But we can very quickly tell whether we're in control or not control on a daily basis, weekly basis, and monthly basis. And it's allowing us to be more proactive. And at the end of the day, because we have the Vuix functionality, we can drill down and manipulate the reports depending on the type of problem that we're encountering. This particular slide was one of the tools and one of the suggestions that was identified and was put in place by the staff. And basically, it's our ability to, in the supermarket, very quickly tell us whether we're in the red zone, yellow zone, or green zone based on the number of cases. And basically, we color code on a daily basis the various containers, cassettes, requisitions. So very quickly, it's easy to tell whether we are 5 days behind, 4, 3, etc. But what's neat about this particular tool is that you can see it's also highly predictive. So what I mean by that is, let's look at accessioning. It's day 4, and they're in the red zone, and the actions that have been contemplated have not materialized. Quickly, we can predict that grossing on day 5 is going to be in the red zone. And again, if nothing is done to address that, cutting is going to be in the red zone on day 6. And mightily, if by day 7, nothing's been done from here through to here, the supermarket and the sign-outs are in the red zone, and we have a backlog, and we can predict we are not going to meet our turnaround time goal. And I kept this for almost the last slide of the day. But this is our wonderful supermarket. It's an old bookshelf that was adopted. Again, a great suggestion from the staff. This is our priority lane on a daily basis. This is a good day that I took this picture. The supermarket is basically in the green zone because there's only that left to be cleared at about, and I don't know what time of day, but the rest of it, the cupboard is bare. I can tell you that's not the case if I was to take the picture today, but basically that's how it's set up. Priority, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all color-coded, and then the pathologists come to the supermarket and they pick out the oldest cases first, the priority cases first for the day, clear that, then they go to the oldest, and then come back to that. So and it's worked very well for us in terms of the 3 years, and it has stood the test of time in terms of functionality. So just to wrap up now, as I said to you, I've been very transparent and honest with you that after 3 years of this particular study, we've had some slippage. We've made determined efforts to get back on track. We have some very real problems associated with, we've had some real problems associated with staffing. This one. Sorry about that. We're just going one forward, yes. I apologize for that. Anyway, our successes with the Lean have stood the test of time in some aspects. So certainly we have eliminated the silo culture. What I mean by that was in the pre-Lean days, we had the pathologist as one silo, the technical people in another silo, the pre-analytical, clerical, and technical assistant people in another silo. And in many instances, they were not working as a team or integrated in order to meet the client's needs. And that was quite apparent in the results that we were seeing in the pre-Lean days. So that's gone, and after 3 years, I can truthfully say we have managed to keep that culture of integration right at the forefront of our departmental culture. We still work in FIFO, and the supermarket in itself is working well. There are now days or sometimes weeks when, because of the backlog, we have to reprioritize. Again, it's always coming back to the fact that staffing is causing us some significant issues. When the system is in flow, definitely we have less overtime, and that's been helpful for the budget. Another item that has stood the test of time, we have never gone back to pre-assigning cases to the pathologist, so that's been helpful as well. And I can almost certainly tell you that having Vuix data or having data to help with problem solving and to make decisions, it's all about evidence, has also stood the test of time and is working for us well. And last but not least, I can truly recommend that having visual controls, be it homemade, be it electronic, be it a business intelligence, be it a clipboard, these help with managing workflow on a daily basis. So there are many lessons that we've learned along the way, and I can tell you from our experiences, and this being year 3, that we have to accept that this type of lean project is always about learning, improving, and moving on, and it always keeps evolving. And as I said to you, even us doing the root cause analysis just a few months ago was a big learning experience for us because so much was being taken for granted. And at the end of the day, there's also a certain amount of denial with respect to what the current realities are, because we know that we were doing really well, we've had slippage, and no one really wants to accept that there is a problem, and so we had to get back on track with that. But all of that is necessary so that we don't delude ourselves that we have excellence when we don't. But at the end of the day, I have to say that maintaining an open and flexible mindset is very instrumental in going forward, and having the resources, minimum staffing on a daily basis is absolutely critical to ensuring you meet your turnaround time benchmarks and your productivity benchmarks. And as I speak to you today, that's the discussions I'm having with my senior leadership team in the hospital, because they have to realize that it's not all about the dollar, is that when it comes to meeting clinical demand. And we got to have some other mechanism of demonstrating what's value added versus non-value added. So I would just put this slide for you. For those of you who have undertaken lean, those of you who are considering undertaking lean, there's many things have to come together in order to take that first step. And here's just some of the key elements associated with that. I've told you about the need to monitor workload and statistics on a daily basis or on an hourly basis, if that's what is needed in your environment. You have to have the time and the resources to deal with change management. You got to have a strong team that's focused on the realities and engage in the vision and determined to exceed benchmarks. And you have to, at some point in time, accept whatever your limitations are gracefully, but again, from a patient perspective, not allow that to become the new status quo, because it's not always in the best interest of the patient to go down that path. So those are some of the tips, and I'll be happy. Secura and Alicia have my contact information. I'm more than happy anytime to talk to you over the phone, communicate with you through email if you need some advice, help, or just want to learn about how we handle something or the other. So I believe that's the last slide.
Thank you, Vince. I appreciate your time today. I do have a couple of questions that came through. So I will go ahead and ask those for the next 9 minutes or so. While other people are typing in their questions, I just want to remind everybody that next month's webinar, so July's webinar, is on the 17th, and it's at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Bill DeSello from SmartQuest will be presenting on microtomy and how far it's come to date, so beginning to end on microtomy. If you haven't registered, please do so on our website. Our featured product for this month is our TissueTake Express X-Series processor. It's a great lean tool for the laboratory. It does offer continuous loading. It is the only processor on the market that continuously loads small batches of tissue throughout the day. It does provide precision processing without the use of xylene, and it reduces turnaround time by up to 67%. and promotes same-day diagnosis. For more information, please reach out to either your Cardinal rep or your local Sakura rep, or you can always go to the Sakura website for additional information. One of the questions we had come through, Vince, was what were the voice dictation issues that caused the drop in meeting the goals?
So I'll just repeat the question for everyone. What were the voice dictation issues that we were having? So the answer to that question is we're on an older version of Dragon Dictate, and there was a combination of issues. The technology was not working from a hardware. There was an upgrade to the software, and at the end of the day, there was also some user learnings where, because 12 pathologists are involved with using the voice dictation system, and they had been using it for many years, and the training was done many years prior to that, there was some customizations that were done along the way. So when you put all of those issues into the hamper, it was a combination of hardware, software, training, how the users were actually applying the voice dictation system, and that was what was causing the productivity of the pathologists to get compromised, and they were getting frustrated because they then had to either repeat the dictation, or they were being slowed down with signing out case reports.
Thank you. The next question was, how was quality affected with this transition?
So I'll repeat the question again. How was quality impacted with the transition? So I'm happy to tell you that we switched from the pre-lean to the post-lean very rapidly. It was just a matter of a week or two. And based on the measures that we had, there was no compromise in quality, because our key measure of quality was turnaround times and backlogs. And from the slides that I showed you, it improved dramatically right off the bat. And so from a quality of turnaround times to the client and the reduction in backlogs, it actually got better. So we had nothing to compromise along the way. The biggest issue was basically for the staff to get accustomed to the new workflow that integrated the pre-analytical, analytical, and post-analytical changes.
Perfect. I do have a couple more questions that I don't think we're going to be able to get to. I'll ask one more. But for the ones that I'm not able to get to because of time restraints, is it okay if I email those to you tomorrow, and then you can actually respond directly to the attendee? Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely, Alicia. I'll be happy to do that.
Great. Now, the next question is, what are the current vendors of this technology on the market?
Oh, that's a great question. I can honestly say that I'm only familiar with the Vuix application, and I think there's another one that I'm aware of. I think it's called SoftPath. But those are the only two business intelligence applications that I'm familiar with. But in a CAP article, that I'll be happy to share that article with you, Alicia, which you can share with the person who asked this question. And I was featured in the CAP article about 2 years ago. A number of vendors were identified as part of that particular article. And as part of this question, I will share that article with you.
Okay. And what I could do is send it out to all of the attendees that are in attendance today. I can email them that link to the article, or email them a copy of the article.
Yeah, that'll be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I am out of time today to ask any more questions, so the few questions that I wasn't able to get to, you'll get a response from Vince tomorrow via email. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for their time today. Remember that your CEU certificate will be issued out in approximately 2 weeks via email, and everybody who was registered will receive one CEU certificate for attending today's webinar. Thank you for your time, everybody, and again, thank you, Vince, for your time and a great presentation. Hope everybody has a great day.